forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane, more flames. Oh no, no more snowflakes.
We can all get along, but there's no stopping. Ay, everybody's wrong, that's a real problem. Ay, they don't want to hear it, but they still talking. Ay, soon enough, we running out of options. Ay, this ain't gonna end till it's in the coffin. Ay, we ain't gonna be friends till we try to squash it. Ay, I don't know how we can make amends or we drop it. Snowflakes melt when it's hot, kid.
Y'all are so fake. Oh no, the forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane, more flames. Oh no, no more snowflakes.
Welcome to, of course, the Fab Four with Sue and Alex, as well as Amária. We're all here together. Dr. Bloom won't be joining us tonight. So, a couple shout outs really quick. We just always love to thank, of course, Soma Fusion and our beautiful Katie Kamara. And she could always use your amazing support. She is, I guess, what do you say, hosting her page with the I'm having a brain fart this tonight. It's one of those nights. So anyway, the clothing line. Oh my goodness.
Savvy?
That Savvy, thank you. Savvy clothing line. So
Hey.
savvy.com/Soma Fusion, SAVVI.com.
Savvy clothing line's actually really, really, really good for
really cool.
being able to exercising, relaxing, and it fits women of all sizes and shapes and everything. It's actually
And
wonderful.
I love it, love it. And so it does give Katie a great boost. And so check out that clothing line. And of course, the proceeds go to amazing beneficiaries. So here we go, guys. We've had some interesting things going on. I guess I've kind of been out of the loop with work and everything, but jumping back in, there's some court cases and stuff going on. I know that we were wanting to talk about. Do you want to lead us into that, Alex?
Yeah. Excuse me. As most of you may be aware, we just had a major Supreme Court decision on the 13th, and it had to do with if the president, through executive action, can order OSHA to have emergency protocols put in. And in this particular situation, it was going to mandate that businesses with 100 employees or more would have to have their employees either vaccinate or be tested weekly and masked. This was a very hotly debated topic for a very long time, considering this mandate was supposed to take effect initially, I believe, back in November.
Right.
But because of the constant negative feedback, it kept on being pushed back. It was pushed back to December, then to January. And then what was going to happen was that it actually took effect the day of the decision, or I think the day prior. And the deadline for everybody to be in compliance was February 9th. Now, what this does is that this actually blocks OSHA from even doing that, which is good in my mind. Because in my mind, and it really is of the individual and through even advice of a medical professional as to what exactly should be the proper method for that particular individual. It's not the government's job.
Exactly.
Though, with all the good news of that, we do have some bad news. The bad news is that the Supreme Court did allow a motion to pass through which would make it that medical professionals who are in facilities that deal with Medicaid and Medicare are able to be mandated. And when you read the brief from this, it basically says, well, they are under the federal branch because of Medicare. And with that, they are technically federal employees.
Jeez.
So there's that kind of like roundabout logic, which I personally do not. Once again, I think a doctor is educated enough to understand these things and should be able to make the decision for themselves, on top of the obviously potentially having their own doctor.
Yep.
What I'm noticing with a lot of these is that it's really about how much can we stretch? What can we do in order to curtail the legalese? How can we go around Congress? Because if you've noticed how Congress has been working, it's been dead in the water. Either there are not enough votes in either each house, or it's just not popular, and so it doesn't even get introduced. And that's not even. I'm not even going to go into the popularity of elected officials in this. That's just how things are working at this moment. It doesn't. So they're basically trying to find ways to get policies through without having to go through the legislature, which that's the reason why we have a legislator in the first place. So, anyways, I digress.
Well, yes. And the good news side of it, at least, I know that we're winning the cases, those of us that have been suing for having our jobs wrongfully taken from us.
Yeah, I mean, if they just keep this sort of thing up, and people are just going to end up just walking off. I mean, that's why we've already had a lot of health officials, even in hospitals and stuff, just walk off. Nurses, doctors, everyone, just kind of walk off, and that's why you end up seeing shortages. So, I mean, if you just keep this up, I mean, it just every kind of job
I
that
just
in the
keep
medical
telling
field, we're
people,
just
make
going to
them
have
fire you.
walk-offs.
Make
Yeah.
them fire you. Don't just
Well,
walk off, make them fire you. That's one thing I
Yeah.
did with the company I was working, is I said, no, I work here. I wanted this job, and you don't have a right to, tell me how to take care of my body and punish a healthy person. It's ridiculous. And so, I'm not going to do that. I don't feel safe with the face diaper because, I have asthma, and they don't need to be asking me for my medical records for proof of that. That's ridiculous. That's a HIPAA violation. And I am not comfortable with sharing my health information with, my employer. They don't need to know everything that's going on with my body. None of their business.
Well, I think
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, well, and then that up the nose swab, I don't trust either. I don't want
Yeah, I
that
don't
crap up
trust
in my
that.
nose.
Yeah, I just I'm just kind of saddened because they have now made it the new norm to almost make it, your business to ask a person, are you jabbed, and it's kind of gotten annoying to ever, have people ask you that question, and it's becoming a normal question, and that's not cool.
I just tell people it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is as frustrating as a lot of this stuff is, it does open up a lot of possibilities. So I was watching and listening to an interview, and it had a man by the name of Dr. Sam White. He's over in the UK, and he's actually in the process of suing in England, the
Nice.
UK, for a lot of these things happening over there with their particular policies. But I'm not really going to be focusing over there. I'm gonna kind of connect it to this, and with a lot of the stuff that RFK is doing. And if you're familiar with what his work, he's very very active in this particular field. One of the things that he's brought up, and several other doctors have, is there is a how medical pharmaceutical companies cannot be held liable for injury because of a law that was passed in the 80s under Reagan. What they said is that there is actually a loophole in that, which is that if there was knowable harm, like if a doctor did something to somebody, but they knew it was going to cause harm and there was evidence to prove it, then they wouldn't put harm upon a person.
Right.
That's what they claimed.
Hippocratic oath.
Well, not even Hippocratic. It was that they wouldn't put someone in harm.
Okay.
Like for instance, they had an example that there was an incident in a CVS, and a child who was 17 years old who did not get consent of their parents got inoculated. Now, first of all, if you're 17-year-old, you cannot sign off of papers.
Right.
You have to have parental permission. Second of all, the problem is that if a employee who was administering that particular vial, they did not age verify, which means that
Right.
they were saying that may be considered fraud.
Right.
So once again, a lot of this stuff is in the air. We still need a lot of legal look into how a lot of these things actually work out. We're still in the weeds at this moment, so I'm going to stop right there because this can be a very tenuous topic.
I noticed that I believe that I have heard that some of the schools were trying to do that to younger students. We're talking about really young kids. They have the attitude that if your kid is in that school, that they're basically giving them consent. Let me know the attitude.
I actually have a personal experience with this.
Okay.
Because I was in high school during the swine flu that we had, was it 10 years ago? 10, 12 years ago?
Right.
And they had, they converted one of the gyms in our high school to a vaccination clinic.
Wow. That's messed up.
Wow.
And so my parents were the one that I signed off on paperwork for me to do that. No, I personally objected to it, but then again, I was only 17, so I have to follow what my parents instructed to do. Your hands are tied at that point. So I remember physically them doing that. I wouldn't be surprised them doing that again.
But what about without the parents' consent is what I'm talking about. The schools just doing it. They're even
there have been
holding pizza parties or whatever. And, and they tell them not to tell their parents.
Well, there was a situation in, I think it was a prep school. I forgot where it is. I think it was called the Obama prep school, something like that. It was a college prep school, and what they were doing was they were doing that. A few people, there were a few children, and there is now a major criminal investigation into this particular thing because what happened was that it was done without the parents' permission, and it was done through coercion. Or because basically what they were saying was that they were saying, well, if you do this, we'll give you lollipops and candy, lollipops and pizza, and you can't disclose this to your parents. So there's I gotta find out exactly where that.
Yeah. But if that's happening there, it wouldn't surprise me. It's happening kind of other places or even very similar attitudes. It's sad that the people don't regard in the rules.
Okay, so it was in LA, and it's the Barack Obama Global Prep Academy, and a 13-year-old student was bribed into getting 2 doses of the Pfizer without parental consent. Yeah. That was what I was describing before. So what we're looking at is let's if we were to move this away from shots, let's let's put this into any situation in general. Like for instance, this may be awkward. Sex ed,
Okay.
consent. Do I even have to go any further than that?
Exactly.
If it's
Yeah.
it's considered a consensual relations if both parties agree, or if many, if, it could be more than two parties if you feel so inclined. But if it's not, it's considered rape or statutory rape.
Right.
There is clear defined legal ramifications of both. One is considered a consensual interaction, and the other one is considered rape. Is there such a? I don't. I'm not sure exactly what the terminology would be for the medical field. I'm not a doctor, so I do not know. I don't claim to be any or have any type of foreknowledge of this information. That's why I'm confused about this. But I would assume that there would be some form of divide between consensual interactions between these things, and that is considered unlawful or violations of consent. I don't know. But I think right now that I think that is the good news. And as terrible as that might sound, people now need to be forced to have that conversation, which a lot of people don't want to have because it's too uncomfortable, which I completely understand.
Right.
Now we can talk. Now we can start airing out some old laundry, bad laundry.
Well, I
And
mean, people are waking up, and they're being forced to wake up because it's affecting them, and they're not just hearing about it like on social media and saying it's happening to this person in this state, it's happening to that person in this city. Now it's affecting them, and so now they're gonna really have to pipe up and come up with whatever action they decide. They have decisions to make. We, the people, have decisions to make with all of this. And we're being
that
shown this, and it's definitely waking people up.
like it's like pouring some cold water on somebody.
Yeah.
It's a very uncomfortable experience, but you're up now. So
Well, and my partner and his family have been detoxing from the inoculation, and they've actually been feeling a lot better. They were talking about how the spike was bothering them, which for me, it acts like a lot like an allergy, and then it flares up my autoimmune, and it's not fun, but we're detoxing, and there's different things that we're taking. Um, that has really been a huge help. And I've been really grateful, especially I feel very lucky and fortunate just to have my parents are physicians. And so having, their own research to accompany with my research and everything, it's just like, it's kind of interesting verifying. Um, and I'm going to spell it out because this person is banned on YouTube. And so I'm just gonna think of or say two words: stew, like you're cooking a stew or soup, and then the name Peter with an S, and so STEWPETERS.TV. And he is actually talking with a lot of physicians. There's different medical experts. There's actually other experts that have been former CDC and who members, I guess you could say, that have been stepping away from those positions because of what's actually being discovered with the inoculation. And so, again, STEWPETERS.TV. And not only do they show actual evidence of what's going on, actual facts, actual science, They also are showing what they're doing in India, in Africa. Um, I'm trying to
In
remember a couple of the other
in
countries where they're
India,
actually, right, they're detoxing people. And so
in
we're actually using the same protocol that those physicians are using in our own household because the inoculation was making us sick. I haven't taken it myself, but I am being affected from the shedding from my partner. And I have noticed a huge, huge, huge difference the past couple weeks since we started this protocol. And I'm not feeling as sickly because like I said, it felt like just a constant, almost like a allergy, just like sniffles and my nose burning and eyes burning and throat burning. I'm noticing that that's reduced to very, 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 very little now, which is very nice. But yeah,
I'm glad
anyway,
it's
that's the
working.
place you can
I'm
go.
really, really glad to hear that it's working because sometimes the protocols do take a while and it feels like, that it's not going to
Right.
work or it's, and people get nervous about it. So, and there's a lot of concerns going around because there's a lot of different people that are making videos and
Mhm.
websites and internet, gatekeepers, if you want to call it. And
Right.
one of it was called Sawbones, and it's a material toward a misguided medicine. And they actually were talking about how it's dangerous to detox from the algae and stuff. And we're seeing more, and I'm seeing more and more of these types of so-called medical pages and websites and videos and things like that, and people that are so we have to be careful of who we listen to, and always, as always, follow the money and follow the people. But sometimes there are people just out there with the medical degree and everything, and there would be some indoctrination involved. So that's the water has been getting very muddied, even much more lately than ever before. I don't know if you guys have noticed that or not.
I've seen where there's been evidence of and of exposure of money trails, like, people that are diagnosed with that. And then after diagnosis, being admitted into the hospital, whether they're put on remdesivir or a ventilator. And whenever they pass away because of remdesivir and or a ventilator, that's on the death certificate. The cause of death is the virus in question. But it's interesting. Like I said, the STEWPETERS.TV. Like I said, the people that he's been interviewing have just got phenomenal information. It's being backed up. They have the facts. They've got everywhere you can go to actually do your own comparative research. And I am really grateful for whistleblowers like that that are brave enough to, push forward
it's
and keep doing it.
I think there are actually two names. You're dropping one. I have two that are actually been dealing with the same situation, and their names are Dave and Sean. Dave hosts a show, X22 Report,
Oh
um,
yes.
on the website.
Yeah,
Don't go on Facebook or YouTube because he doesn't have anything. Go on to
yeah.
his
He's got his
website.
own
It's his own.
Right.
He has his own website.
x22report.com. So um yeah, he's got a lot of things. He's very good for going on there and keeping up to date of what's going on. There's a lot of times that he does a lot of heavy research, and a lot of times that as much as research that we do, it's a ton of work. It's a ton of time.
Right.
So I love listening to him because he helped condense everything.
Well, you just had Dr. Zelenko on,
Yes,
and he does his
Dr.
own protocol.
Zelenko is so amazing.
And the other gentleman, Sean, his show is STG Report.
Right.
They basically do very similar work. He and Dr. Sam White was the gentleman. Sean interviewed him. I think it was last week, talking about the case in the UK. Um, and if I could actually change the topic real quickly, uh,
Mhm.
on STG Report, he actually had interview that I thought was very interesting that they actually had. And they were talking about his topic. The his title for this is Deep Woo, because he's doesn't like a lot of these like more conspiratorial topics.
Right.
But it was talking about ancient like lost histories,
Sounds cool.
and he was talking about Tartaria, mud floods, and star forts.
Nice.
And I found that to be very interesting personally,
Of course you
because
did.
Yeah, Alex
because
is actually getting me into all of that now.
because the funny thing is I'm actually personally making a timeline for this stuff.
Nice.
And I understand there's history books you can do that, or you'll have people with I have arguments with people who are with the contact community, and they'll say, "Oh, but they already have our timelines. We already made it." I'm like, "Yeah, from a celestial point of view. What about down here? What were we observing?"
Right.
And that's why I was interesting, and I was like, "Okay." Just a brief overview. Tartaria, for people who are not familiar, I know I mentioned about this a while ago. It's a supposed lost civilization that existed less than 200 years ago, so relatively recent. And if you look at documents such as like the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is a well-known encyclopedia, a very respected one, and other scholarly documents, excuse me, they will tell you that there was a civilization that was in the Central Asian steppes that is not Russia nor China, but still there. But if you go by mainstream academia, they say nope, that they never existed. There's nothing there. It was either Mongolians, Chinese, or some other race or culture there.
Right.
Which is funny because when you look at the architecture and stuff like that, it does not look like anything of any of
Right.
those.
Yeah.
And this is why I was like, okay, let's go down this rabbit hole a little bit. Let's start researching. And this is when I went to go into the Book of Enoch, of all places.
Yes.
I'm like, why? And you may be asking yourself, why would I look into the Book of Enoch? Well, because I started looking at Nephilim. And if you want to go to anywhere with Nephilim, which there are other names for it. I didn't realize there were other names for Nephilim, but other names you may be familiar with are giants, or if you're familiar with Greek mythology, titans.
Titans.
They're titans. So now we're connecting Greek mythology, Judeo-Christian, Norse
Right.
mythology, all these, and like, okay. And now we have to do this one thing, which is the ancients aren't stupid. And apparently there's this mentality that, oh, these people were, unsophisticated because their technology was not like ours. Even though
I think they were far advanced to us.
Exactly.
I've been seeing more evidence that actually that we were very, very advanced, and something and then something just shot us all back down to the dark ages, as the expression goes, because that's where it went.
The cabal, they've been doing this for thousands of years.
So I kept on going, then I'm like, oh, I never realized that makes sense. Because if you look at like different depictions of giants, you find that they're anywhere from 9 to 30, if not taller, feet tall. And I was like, okay, Tartarian buildings had 20-foot walkway entrances.
Right.
Yeah,
the big
steps and the big doors.
Like,
yeah,
exactly. You're like, why would they have like? Oh,
When you look
that's
at
the reason
places,
why.
You look at places like Machu Picchu and the different Mexican pyramids that have, not only are they step pyramids, but then they have little steps within the big steps.
Yeah.
It's like, so we're talking about two particular different groups that coexisted,
Mhm.
and there are signs of it everywhere. But history will say, "Oh, these were just great craftsmen with fantastic engineering capabilities." Meanwhile, engineers nowadays with modern computers cannot make the precise cuts that would be required to make some of these things.
Right.
Yeah. Makes total
And
sense.
most of the stuff is not made using conventional adhesives as well. So there's no cement, there's no concrete, there's no wood, there's no hemp. It's just stone
And a
put
lot of
on
the
top of each other.
stone that looks like it's cut, you would actually think it would have to be melted or cut with diamond saws on some of those things. Just the
Yeah,
precision, it's
And yeah,
laser precision.
the the how clean cut everything is. It's not
Really
like
cool.
jagged, it's smooth and stuff like that. So yeah,
and
it's
then
just
on top of this, they were talking about the mud floods later on. I'm like, and
Hmm.
then they started talking about something that was interesting, which was uh, they talked about Utah of all places,
Right.
and particularly they were talking about the Mormon temple in Salt Lake,
Yep.
and how if you look at the temple, there's actually uh, there are subterranean floors,
Hmm.
and that windows in that temple where they're like, if you look out the window, you'll just see earth. You wouldn't see ground level. They're below the earth.
You've
And so
also got the church vaults that are connected to the military, just up Little Cottonwood Canyon as you head up towards Snowbird, Alta resorts. Just
oh
the base
wow.
of the canyon there is where you've got the military base. You can actually see where the dome is. And supposedly it's one of the entrances to Tartaria there in Salt Lake, which is
Oh wow.
interesting.
That's
Um,
Tartarus.
neat. That's
Isn't that
Tartarian.
cool?
yeah. And
See,
That
Alex,
would
now
make
what you gotta do is you gotta come out here and we can chill and like see if we can go snoop around the mountain, right?
well. It's funny.
that would be a cool adventure.
Well,
Right.
here's another theory. Here's another thought I had with this. What if Tartaria is Tartarus?
So what is
That
Tataris?
it I mean, it's very possible because there's constantly, as you and I've been studying on all these papers and stories and thing, there's constant name changes. You know how they, as a word sounds similar to it, and then they would switch over to that
Yeah,
word and the
yeah.
name. There's just many, many, many examples absolutely everywhere, even straight from the Bible itself. There's just constant name changes, so that makes you wonder if there was a point of origin and how it's something has been called. So that wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Well, that makes
They,
sense. Like with Job, like none of the places that they talk about in Job even exist on this earth. But what if they're in Tartaria, like they're in the under
which
earth, or what if they're in
well,
the
that's actually kind of funny you mentioned that. Actually, to answer your question, you're asking what Taurus is.
hmm
Taurus is okay. In Greek mythology, you have the underworld, but there are different levels of the underworld. Kind of like when they say there's different levels of hell.
Yeah.
In so the main area of the underworld is called Erebus, and it's just the land of the dead. It's just an undead soul who's just roaming for the rest of their days. Uh, Tartarus is considered the land of damnation for Titans. And so
Interesting.
there are these massive doors that seal the Titans within these walls. And the only thing that can open them is the hand of a mortal pressing upon it or have some form of incantation with one of the other gods. And there's besides that, there is no way to open this from inside that door. Now, and you'll have titans like Kronos or Prometheus or Even Gaia was put there at one time. Mother Earth, Gaia, was put
Mm-hmm.
there at one time because she was a Titan. They
Interesting.
were not very indiscriminate about this.
Hmm.
But I was like, Tartaria, Tartarus. We have this thing in world history where names are similar, but they change, and
Right.
definitions may move around with them. So it was just one of those things where it's just like, okay, let's start let's like figuring things out. So that's kind of where my mind kind of went, and I might be going in a completely wrong direction, but I'm like, how often is it that you run into something and they're two completely similar names?
Yeah.
If you go into like learning about languages, there's a term which is called a cognate. Now, a cognate is when you have two languages have basically the same word
The
for
word
that.
sounds similar. Yeah.
Like, for instance, in a lot of Romance languages, the day of Monday is lunes or lune.
Yeah. Lunar.
They all sound similar, and Monday
Uh,
is
mon- yeah.
moon.
Months
We
are similar as well.
Yeah.
yes,
Moon.
yeah. Monday
Yeah.
is just moon day, the day of the moon.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but Luna is Latin, and that's a lot of the Romance
That's what
languages
the
which come
moon
from
is.
Latin will use that. Will use their particular vernacular for that.
Right.
So it's like, can we use this for other things besides, modern situations? Can we use this for the past? And
Yeah.
can we start making a story about what actually was happening outside of what academia describes? Because there have been times where academia has been caught tampering with things. Like there was a story of the Smithsonian at one time damaging fossils and skeletal remains that were large. I think one was a femur bone that was 15 feet long,
Wow.
and it baffled scientists that they were unable to understand exactly what it was from or who was, who, what, or when, where, why, how type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, there were claims that it was destroyed.
Wouldn't
Anyways,
surprise me.
but that's neither here nor there. What I'm doing is trying to figure out what was actually happening, besides the outside of the idea that histories were written by the victors. So
Nice.
that's where I am at right now with that. And I'm even, what was I was connecting two other things with it. Oh, I was also connecting just Sarah, Freemasonry, and Illuminati work as well.
Nice.
I know a lot of these like crazy topics that most people don't like getting into, but what's funny is that a lot of those stories will actually interconnect with one another. So how many of
Well, they
these
do
different...
because aren't the different races, both big and small, were actually coinciding and working together, living together and so forth. I mean, there was that.
Well,
So
if we talk about that, well, then you go to Noah.
yeah.
That you can go into Noah and parts of Genesis, because people who were born of Nephilim, who are children of Nephilim, are considered unclean according to those writings.
Right.
So because Nephilim are children of fallen angels. So a fallen angel is one of the angels that fought with Lucifer in heaven against God and the angels over there in heaven. So what did they do when they got banished? Well, they had some fun down here.
Mm.
And some of that hanky panky, well, it resulted in children, obviously. And gene tampering is a very dangerous thing, especially when you are in the image of a particular creator.
Right.
And so the only reason why Noah was doing a lot of these things is because his family line was not connected to any of this. It was a pure line. And so a lot of the floods, at least this is how they describe it, is this is a way of sweep cleaning all that was damaged or tainted by the fallen angels, which made everything anew. Now, if you deal with floods, then you can deal with things like Lemuria and Atlantis. And so you see where this kind of like rules, becomes a rolling rock with moss after a while, because you're like, wait a minute, this said that, and then that said that, and it's like, how many of these things are all happening at the same time, and yet we have like 5 people talking about a different things, like
Right.
I'm not advocating for a mass conspiracy theory, but is there a kind of like a hidden history that is within these things which are just claimed as these theories, and they're just separated so that it makes it sound like people are just crazy?
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Well, I observed that they have been dividing the stories and the time frames of the stories, making it sound like they're far apart and they're in no relation with each other, when it's very, very possible that they are in relation with each other, and they're possibly roughly around the same time frames.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been doing that for a very long time. Even now, all the current situations and stories that are going on that we're living through, they constantly are trying to put in no relevancy to with like the the fake demic stuff. They said this is not related to that and things like that. The things about society, they're constantly doing drift apart between the different races and things. I'm just saying that they're constantly doing separating and sorting. So why not? They do it in history. They're doing it now.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because if you go by a lot of the different theories that go on around this, is that they talk about resets. And
Right.
what are we dealing with right now? We're talking about the World Economic Forum and their Great Reset. Isn't that funny how all of a sudden we're dealing with a reset right now when there was once in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we dealing with something that has happened in the past? And
That
as with
Saint
a lot of
Germain
things,
type fund.
it's like nothing is new underneath the sun, and history has a habit of being not linear, and history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. There are similar things that have happened in the past, and if we don't learn from them, then they continue to happen.
Right.
Well, they continue to go back to factory setting.
And we have not, and we
And
haven't
it
learned.
sounds like that's what they want, the Great Reset, but sometimes it makes me think that they want to push us back to factory setting, our society, if you will, and just kind of wipe it, start all over again. It's kind of like we didn't get it to the way we wanted to, so let's kind of start it all over again.
I don't,
Um, but they keep rinse, lather, and repeat, as I expressly said it, and it's not working. So the thing is to collapse systems and never have to deal with it ever again. And we're hoping we can get in that direction. And it would actually, I don't know if this is actually the first time that we have actually done this. Allow the system to finally implode on itself, or is this the first time we're letting it do that?
I don't think this is the first time that we allowed this to do that. There has been evidence to suggest that
To
we have
get rid of an
constantly.
old system that's not working, it's not good for the people.
There has been evidence to not prove but suggest that something like this has happened in the past multiple times. I mean, think about how our civilizations just change really quickly. I mean, think of how things were 300 years ago, right? Age of Discovery, colonial periods of time, very, very low tech relative to what we were talking about. Then fast forward 100 years, and you're talking about electricity being relatively new, and industrial revolution. And then fast forward again another 50 years, airplanes. And then another 50 years from there, NASA and all that stuff. And so it's like, how in the world did we go from sailboats, or how did we go from galleons to spacecraft in less than 200 years, when we had over 10,000 years of history and things didn't advance like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's still rolling stones down the hill, you know. Um,
I mean,
it,
it logically does not make sense because even in if
yeah,
you go by what historians talk about, they talk about what's it called? Step advancement and exponential advancement.
Right.
Uh,
you see a lot of evidence being constantly left behind about what happened in the past, but they would like it to be erased and just say nothing to see here, don't look at it. So I totally agree with you on that, Alex. Um, but I'm also seeing, and this is just my opinion, I'm also seeing that in our society today, we the signs that we are being controlled is that only certain types of technology and lifestyles, if you will, is allowed to advance while others are being pressed to stay behind. I don't know if you noticed that. For example,
Sure.
cars have not really evolved so much. I think we should be into like flying vehicles now, but we're not. It's all these other technologies, such as communication, has been advancing very rapidly. We've gone from a corded telephone, or if you want to go back a little further, telegraph, to the cell phone, which has absolutely everything. And I know one of, I mean, like I said, I know opinionally from what I have observed, I actually believe that it is having to do with some sort of form of an AI out there, whatever all major power that's doing this. And when I see this thing about the all-seeing eye, I'm actually thinking that the technology was pushed to be advanced so that all of us can be watched, if you will, spied on, checked after, and it's not
basically,
important to advance in other areas because it has nothing to do with looking after, not looking after us in a good way, benevolent way, but seeing us in a spying way.
Well, the
that actually makes sense because there's something called the Great Stagnation when it comes to some technology, and what it talks about is that any technology is not going to advance as rapidly if it leads to self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Like for instance, we're going from gas cars to they're pushing it to electric cars. Well, electric cars are not sustainable considering that they require them constantly to be plugged
We
in.
still have to use the fuel though to the electricity to still charge the car up.
Yeah.
right.
So it doesn't make any sense. It's almost like double the amount of energy that it takes for this one thing to work versus one type of energy to have a technology work, such as some sort of gasoline fuel of some sort.
Well, the whole point in if you think about it, the whole point of it is to constantly have a person connected to the grid.
Right.
If they're not connected to the grid, then they cannot be controlled.
Right. And
Like,
yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of referring to. That the all-seeing,
yeah, they're
the
not gonna.
all-seeing
Yeah,
eye,
exactly.
the upper whatever, whoever's at the top of the tippity top of this pyramid of um this control here,
Yeah.
and that everything that they want has to do with the control of all the people in the world. So
Exactly.
they're going to pick they're going to pick and cherry pick and choose of what they want to advance according to whatever their agenda is. And that is actually a sign that there is something wrong with the world. I don't know how many people in the world has actually noticed that, but I have noticed it. And it gets to be worrisome when you find out, what the possible agenda is to the human race, which the guide right there for the answer to that is the Georgia Guidestone is one of the entrance of ideas of what they're up to.
Well, I bet another thing that's interesting is that there's always a euphemism that they use, which is smart. They constantly use the word smart. Smart house, smart phone, smart car. Everything is smart. But the thing is that a lot of these things use technology in some shape or form. There's a computer in there, and you can dictate that stuff. But remember, that stuff also can potentially have back doors, or it could be hacked. It can have code in there, which is potentially malicious. There's a whole
It's
bunch
actually
of different...
not smart to have a smart house. I'm afraid of those things. I'm afraid that if there's a higher power that could easily just lock me in there if they want to, and
Oh,
even deprive it of oxygen.
well, you don't even need a higher power to do that. All you need someone is basic
Yeah.
computing skills, and they
Right,
can go into the code and they can start just
But they
conducting havoc. I mean,
demonstrated that with the smart car at one time. There was a guy he was supposed to be what's considered a good hacker. I mean, we have bad hackers that do it for nefarious reasons, but we have good hackers that are out there to actually stop the bad hackers from, getting into things and then try to
Cyber
improve
warfare.
technology, if you will. But there was a guy that actually proved a point where he took another guy's car and said, look, they can be hacked into, because the guy was bragging about how wonderful the car is and how it's got all these bells and whistles. And he went into his laptop and hacked into it and was able to unlock the doors. So,
and,
um, so that was,
well, and it's actually kind of funny you mentioned good hackers and bad hackers, because that's actually, when it comes to hackers, that's actually where the terms white hat, gray hat, and black hat come from. It all has to do with actually has to do with what your alignment is with hacking. Oh my gosh, that sounds like John.
Ah,
Why does everything eventually devolve into D&D and dealing with alignment, personality alignments? Anyways,
that's
I-
Earth for you. Do you think that just simply saying that's Earth for you?
was that?
Well, isn't that universal, or is that just Earth?
I do not know. It's probably unknowable. That's probably an unknowable question.
Yeah.
There are certain things you don't ask. You don't ask if there is an edge, and you don't also ask if if gravity is a real thing. Sometimes it just these things, certain things just exist for just existing.
Right, and you don't ask if you can actually take a banana and run it through a bow and see if you can treat it like an arrow.
Amongst others, yes. So I just found that very interesting. How all these things are just kind of interconnecting with one another, and how it's rarely ever talked about in a kind of a intelligible, well, probably not intelligible, in a kind of legitimate way. It always has that banner of, oh, this is false or fake, or it's conspiratorial. It's never actually given the time of day of saying, what if we totally screwed up?
right.
It's like, we can question science. Why can't we question history? Why can't we question literature? Why can't we question anything else? The whole point of us in the human experience is to, at least my viewpoint on this is for us to have a more perfect society. And that means constantly fixing the mistakes we've made. And if we somehow messed up a history textbook, I would assume that what we want to do is to, have our facts correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if we're saying something is a fact and we learn, 20 years later, oh, that's not true, we would fix that. But
that's how we grow, and that's how we learn, and that's how society over time can improve on itself.
And if we don't do that, are we just as fault as the group that initially put there in the first place? Really, we're perpetuating that situation.
It's something to think about, that you should not put your trust in just one source, one person, one being, one straight line, because nothing is in a straight line in life.
Just always walk around with a skeptical mind.
Yeah.
What if?
I like that.
What if and why are two of the most powerful questions you can ask. And usually it irritates a lot of people when you ask those questions. But usually, and I've learned the reason why is because it's uncomfortable to ask sometimes. Well, why do you do that? It's like, why do you do that? Because I do. Well, why? Well, because that's how I've been doing things. What caused you to do that? And yes, I'm not suggesting you say why 5 times in a row, because that's just going to be annoying and rude.
And my daughter does it.
And every 2-year-old will do the same thing when they start talking.
Yeah. But that's a good thing. That shows an intelligent kid. you know,
It
that they
showed.
want to know why versus one that just goes along and just obeys daily. That's it, just straight obedience. I would worry if I had that kind of kid. It's nice.
It's
It's a nice idea to have a kid that would just simply do what you're told and completely obey. But then, what are they going to be like when they're an adult? You know,
well, it sounds like
that's just,
well,
yeah.
that sounds like an ingredient for mass formative psychosis, as one doctor suggested.
Yeah.
If you know which one I'm talking about, you get the joke. but but I shared that. I thought it was a very interesting topic that I was looking into.
No, I like the just what you've been updating on us with that. I've been really fascinated as well. And your little bedtime stories, come on, Alex, they're awesome.
I, I wish I could do more of them. I've just been busy lately, but I enjoy doing them when I can.
I hear ya. I hear ya.
They
Yeah,
all have
this
lives.
that
It's
I mean that's
crazy with
the great thing that we can dig and just ask questions. I really appreciate that all of us are willing to even ask each other. We contact each other all the time and say, well, what about this? You know?
And it's
So
funny. The best part about that is that that's just how society advances. I mean, now we do it online, but at one time it was in taverns and beer halls and in chateaus and saloons and salons and different places. That is just how things get. Do they don't normally happen in a think tank. They happen in conventional areas of a gathering, usually. At least if things happen organically, because sometimes they will be manufactured, which does
how
happen.
many times do we hear a story about how something came about that starts at a bar?
Either a bar or my favorite. It all started in my garage.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Or it
A
started by
band.
this one guy who's sitting on the potty
Uh,
or in the
uh,
shower. Those potty and shower somehow. What is up with that? But those two places are idea places sometimes.
oh,
Letting go of that
I've heard water is a very healing element.
shit.
Well, the reason why is because it starts with one person that comes with an idea, and then they'll go to their buddies and their friends, their colleagues, and say, "Oh, what do you think about this?" You know.
Mhm.
So I mean, and those buddies or friends are at a bar usually. So yeah, I can see it.
And well, it's actually kind of funny because a lot of people actually talk about how alcohol has an effect on the body where it allows a person to think outside the ways they usually would. You know, the lack of inhibition. That usually is that kind of like, don't do that. But it is technically suggest, and I'm drink responsibly. I'm not suggesting someone to just go in a bender or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I
That's
mean,
not.
it's
I'm
not
not
like
saying that
you're
whatsoever.
suggesting for us to drink before we go on the show.
I'm just. There has been studies which say, oh, a person who drinks, somebody who's drinking responsibly will have like vivid thoughts of different things. And then, so like they say, if you want to really start thinking, you drink. But if you really want to focus, you drink coffee.
Yeah.
You know, they just say depending on what particular liquid you're consuming. And I'm also not suggesting drink hydrochloric acid. That's not a smart idea either.
Oh God.
Uh, you'll do that once, and you won't be have time to regret it at that point in time.
I mean, I'm just joking when I say that, but Amaria, how many drinks do you think it took before somebody came up with the song 99 Bottles of Beer on the Wall?
Well,
It must have been Oktoberfest somewhere.
I think it had to do with the fact that there was somebody who is doing like beer. You guys know what like beer is?
Yeah.
What's like beer?
It's the non-alcoholic things like
Oh,
O'Deal's and Beck.
No,
okay.
that's
I've
what light
heard of
beer.
this
Okay.
beer.
And they're
Okay.
like 99 bottles of beer, and it's like O'Doul's. They're like, it took me 99 bottles to actually start getting the same buzz.
You would be peeing your freaking guts out.
And you know what's funny about that song is that they
You know
don't talk
what? They
about
never
bathroom
said
breaks.
what size of the bottle
Right.
is, though, either.
No, they
There's that.
don't. They're not very specific. But then again, I don't think I want to know why you have 99
Well,
bottles,
we can research that, right?
or
That'll be for next time.
or if it's 99 people doing one round or stuff. I'm
Oh,
not.
maybe.
But then again, I think that's a conversation for another day.
If it's in Utah, it's got to be 99 people. You're only allowed one drink at a time.
That's a pretty dry state, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty dry. That's funny.
Uh,
Like I've
I'm,
bartended in Utah and a little bit here in Idaho, and it's definitely a lot more strict there. In Vegas is different too. You can double fist it there, but not
yeah,
here in Utah.
maybe it's in Czechia or Austria. I hear they have pretty large alcoholic consumers. More than the the legendary Germany, from what everyone talks about. Oh,
Our
Germans.
Bavarian friends.
Yeah, but but per capita usually it's Czechia or
Oh yeah, I think the Serbs
Austria.
and Russians and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they tend to put away a lot of the hard stuff real quick.
And what
I
about
don't
the
know
Irish?
why. It's
The Irish, oh, they love their Guinness. You've got to
Yeah.
have
and you
your
can't even get
pint,
real Guinness in the States.
No,
right?
no, they were. I have some friends that are from Ireland, and they told me the stuff in the state tastes nothing like the stuff in the tap that's at the bar in Ireland.
Oh, go to the
So
pubs in Ireland. They're
yeah,
great.
Oh,
yeah. But we all need to take a trip out there.
Oh,
one day.
I would love to go again. It's been God, in '97 is when I was in Dublin, and that was a
Well,
fun trip.
when hopefully when everything gets more situated,
Yeah,
Right.
I
that
can't wait for that.
things can we could start having this more free flow of transportation and
Right.
information and conversation. That's
Right.
interesting. Transportation, information, transportation. Ah, I like that one. I wasn't even planning that one. That actually sounded like a nice ring. Anyways, I think it's a goal to go forward to.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually another thing that they talk about how um, the travel situation back in they call it ancient times, which it really wasn't ancient, and how people traveled and communicate and exchange information in order for products or services and goods to exist.
Oh, if we could go back to that tangent I went on when it came to alternate histories and stuff like that. There was one researcher who suggested that we got calendars completely wrong.
Yep.
We supposedly have taken 1,000 years are misplaced somewhere, and
Mhm.
uh,
13
there's not
months and 13 zodiacs and
it-
28
there's a
days on each month.
there's a whole and like what if all that stuff was had to be what if everything we have when it came to catalog everything, there's that word catalog, calendar, uh,
Right.
is wrong. And maybe it's done wrong intentionally as a form of manipulation. I'm
Right.
not saying it is. I'm just saying that that's another suggestion that has
Well,
been
the
made.
cabal
Well,
is
when you
very superstitious, and so anything that they do goes with astrology. They've got it going with just different psychic predictions. I mean,
yeah,
it's
numerologies
really
and stuff like
fascinating.
that.
Right, exactly.
So
And the
Yep.
yeah,
Hebrew language is
That's
based on a
so,
lot of
when we,
numerology.
but there's always people in the world throughout our history that leaves records behind when they went to point A to point B, how long it took them to get there, and things like that. And a lot of times they have hidden, I believe, in my opinion, they have hidden these records, and some of them have leaked out. So
Yeah.
we know, I mean, from maps and things, which are also have been manipulated, but we know that many people from different corners of the earth have gotten together in the past and have exchanged ideas and talked and you know um made great things for our planet.
yeah, definitely. And certain contacts with different groups that are considered unacknowledged until recently. Uh, there have been suggestions of groups such as the Knights Templar or Romans or Phoenicians, or amongst other groups that have been in the New World, or vice versa. That I can't confirm any of those things, but if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck,
Right.
you might as well
Yeah,
figure out why is there a duck in the door in the first place.
Cluck, cluck.
Definitely.
Like, definitely always keep a skeptical mind when it comes to a lot of these things.
Right.
But that's our job. We're supposed to be skeptical. We're supposed to question. We're supposed to look at. Everybody did that. You can imagine what kind of world would we live in.
There you
Definitely a
go.
topic for next week. I think that definitely a topic that we shall explore next week, as I think we
Absolutely.
just started this conversation, but you know what? But anyways,
There we go. Sounds like a good place to wrap things up. It's
Absolutely.
been interesting talking to you guys again, and I'm liking where
Yeah.
these conversations are going. Just kind of some history. I really do appreciate that. And Alex, I love your research. It's fascinating, and I can't wait to continue this discussion. Thanks so much, Sue, also for being with us and your
Thank you.
insight.
Oh, and by the way, since this is your first show of the year, Happy New Year's, Amária.
There you go. Thank you. Happy New Year to you and to all of our wonderful listeners. Thank you so much for listening, and any comments that you have. We love to hear what you have to say and we get back to you. Love to have those conversations. And if you guys have any suggestions on any topics, absolutely feel free to drop a note and let us know. We'd love to discuss your topics.
look
Well,
forward to
guys,
that.
till next time, love you guys so much. And thanks so much, everybody, for listening on Soma Fusion to the Fab Four with HeartMind Expressions. We'll see you
Bye.
guys next time.
Ta-ta.
Bye. Love you.